Okay, we will call to order the Planning Commission for May 8th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Silva?
Here.
Commissioner Evans?
Present.
Commissioner Lamaika? Commissioner Ross? Commissioner Dodson? Vice Chair Spalletta?
Present.
Chair Owens?
Present.
For the record, we have a quorum.
Okay, and I would like to say thank you for William Silva. He is our new Planning Commissioner. This is his first night, so we'll introduce him here, and thank you for joining us. Okay, review of agenda items. If any item has arisen after the 72-hour posting deadline, a 2 to 3 majority vote may be taken so that it can be heard. Has anything come up? No. Okay, we'll open up to public comment. Any members wishing to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, may get up and do so now. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back to approval of minutes. March 20th, 2019, April 10th, 2019, and April 24th, 2019. Has everybody had a chance to go over these?
Yeah. It all seemed fine to me. I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none? Good. Okay, business items. Use permit application UP 1909 Chartwell School. Property owners and applicant is requesting use permit approval to allow the construction of 2 96 square foot storage sheds. We'll hear from staff.
The proposed project, this is Chartwell Schools proposing 2 storage sheds. These are at the northwest corner of the school. These will be used, these are instructional purposes that they are using as part of their science, technology, and engineering, arts, and mathematics classes. Chartwell School has been in place since 2003 or 4. So the school has been there now, it's going on 15 years. They've done some other minor improvements, which have been mostly related to kind of some minor storage buildings. So in this case, these are here. Staff has identified that these are architecturally going to be compatible with the green aspects that they've already built into the school. I think this is one of the LEED, this is LEED certified facility. So the projects themselves will not have any detrimental impact to the adjoining surrounding area. There's removing no vegetation. So city staff has provided a resolution for approval in the staff report, and the headmaster and another representative from Chartwell School are here this evening. That can probably give you a little bit better overview of the needs and design that they put into adding these storage facilities.
Very good. Okay, we will open it up to the applicant at this time.
Do we have any, I should have checked the PowerPoint. Yeah, we have the floor plan and some site photos if you wanted to go through those with the applicant.
Hi, thank you all. My name is John Legro. I'm the Director of Technology and Campus Management at Chartwell School. What we are doing is that we are trying to build new sheds for our STEAM program, which is Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. Chartwell School is a school for children with language-based learning differences. What we are finding out is that a lot of data shows that students with these differences have the natural ability to do hands-on learning. And so beyond the fact that we are trying to teach these children, very good and very well adapted reading and literacy skills, we are trying to build their natural skills, which is hands-on learning. Part of this is, for example, woodshop. And so the sheds that we are having is right next to our 400 building. What you are seeing is that on the right-hand side is really where our workshop and woodshop is, and on the left-hand side is a teaching element. And so what we are trying to do is that we are trying to move some of the equipment that is in the right-hand side of the building and put them in the sheds, so then that way we could have that more of a maker space where we're building different things, like integrating technology into it, like little bits, robotics, and things of that nature. So we have more space for the robotics, but to do that, we need storage and other facilities to build outside. And that is what we are hoping to do.
When you say storage, is it a classroom that you're going to build, or is it it's a shed?
There are actually 2 storage sheds.
Okay.
They are it's not it's a prefab kit that will come to you, and then we have blueprints with it, and knowing how to describe it. We went through originally trying to get a building permit for it, but we realized that it was going to be too difficult if we wanted electricity in there, so we pulled back on the building permit. But during that process, we got all the blueprints from the company, what it needed to do and how to build it accordingly if we were going to go that route. And so since we did all that information, we are still going to go with everything that the city wanted to do in that aspect. We are just not going to put electricity in the sheds.
Okay.
So they're strictly going to be just storage sheds?
Correct.
Okay.
With a light, right?
No light. That was the part that we pulled back of from the building permit. That was the original process. Now it's just going to be 2 sheds.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Almost like a tough shed.
That's what it
Yeah,
looks like,
it's the shed system that you actually can buy at Costco.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Tough Shed, but different, it's a wood material. And we're going to be building these according to all their specs, but we're also going to be matching it to the buildings that we have next to it. So we're going to do our best about matching the paints and things of that nature, so it looks like it's part of the building next to it.
Very good. Mr. Silva, anything for applicant?
Will the kids get to help building it?
We were thinking, we were actually thinking, we were actually thinking about that because we have, our high school is a project-based learning thing, and right now, the high school project is on community building, and we have one team that is working part of Chartwell. And so, depending upon if this use permit it was agreed upon, and allowing the time, because we only have about 22 days left of school, it was a possibility.
I have just a quick question for
Yes.
staff, perhaps. I know that a building permit's not required for a shed without electrical less than 120 square feet. Is the conditional use permit even required? Are you guys doing that so that there's an opportunity to maybe do something more with it later?
Any use in this zone for a public quasi-building, it's subject to a use permit. So just like a church facility that does a storage building, schools and the same purpose, they all require to have use permits. That's how the code is currently established.
no questions.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you all.
Okay, anybody else wishing to speak on this matter can come forth? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commissioners. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve use permit application UP-19-09.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, seeing none, so passed. An appeal may be submitted in writing within 7 calendar days from the date of this meeting. The appeal shall state the pertinent facts and the basis for the appeal. Shall be accompanied by the required filing fee. Don't think you want to do that, but I still have to say it. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to coastal application, CPD 1903, Monterey Regional Park District property owner and City of Seaside applicant are requesting the approval of the coastal development permit to construct fireworks there. Staff.
This year, the City of Seaside will be moving the celebration event that occurred last year on the golf course. There's logistics related to security and police services. So it's been moved to City Hall, and as part of that, the city would be using a portion of Laguna Grande Park to launch the firework display from. And currently in our coastal development plan, there's exemptions for these type of activities, but it states that when there's a use of a public park or a public property, that would require a coastal development permit. So that is the main reason as to why we're bringing it forward to the city for a coastal development permit. Otherwise, it would have been exempt if this is an activity done on a non-public property within the coastal zone. So what we have here is, this is the section of Canyon Del Rey that will be closed off during the event. And there will also, I have available this evening as the recreation staff is here to provide an overview of the City Hall event that will be occurring on the grounds. Just want to give you an overview of that, but the main reason for the coastal development permit only is for the use of a portion of the roadway and the portion of Laguna Grande Park. Here on the site plan, this is the area of the park that will be used for the launching of the fireworks. This is an exclusion zone, generally in terms of where the fireworks will be let off, and they will explode above that exclusion zone. Could be a little bit outside of that, but this is generally exclusion zone for the display. And then here is other areas within the area that will be used for the launching of the fireworks. And the fire department staff is available this evening if there's any questions related to what will be, how the staging will occur and how it will be monitored during the event. This is the coastal boundary that we have that is going along. This section of Canyon Del Rey is in the coastal zone, as well as the area here between Canyon Del Rey and the park. This area is outside, this area is in the coastal boundaries. So again, we will have the road closure of Canyon Del Rey from Hilby Avenue to Sonoma Avenue. There will be, talking with the police department, with the fire department, there is an orange line that was limited as kind of a barricade area for the public. That has now been expanded to the middle of Canyon Del Rey, which will be used as a fire safety and pedestrian and police access zone during the event. So anything that's occurring both on the park area as well as anything that happens within the City Hall grounds, there will be a lane of access that will be available for public safety during the event. The event will be from 4 o'clock p.m. till 10 p.m., and the fireworks will be let off in a 20-minute display, probably starting around dusk, around 9 o'clock. Here's basically a more identification of the street closure that will be occurring for the event. The red area identifies the fireworks zone, and then here is the City Hall grounds that will be used for the city celebration event, and then there will be a portion of the land that will be closed off on Harcourt Avenue. Now, typically in the past, the city has had its birthday celebration, and there has been some other events that the city's had, and this has always been, so this road closure is not different from what we've done in the past. That's been standard protocol for any event large event we do on the City Hall grounds. And that includes Harcourt Avenue as well. Here's a photo. This is looking from, gotta get my directions. This is from the east end of the park. This is generally the stage area for the blues in the park. And that would be looking in that direction towards the church that is to the east. This is another view. This is taken from the east side, looking back toward the area of the Embassy Suites and the area that would be further to the west. Here's a view that is taken from across the street, looking toward the firework display, and that's looking to the north or to the south. And then this is a view looking at the park, at the City Hall grounds, from the driveway into the police station on the east side. Here are some event activities, and I can have Mr. Dan Mewis with the Recreation Services that can give you an overview of the events that will be happening that evening. In closing, what we do want to indicate is that we have coordinated with Fish and Game, the Monterey Bay Sanctuary, and we're not going over the sanctuary, so there's no permit required from the sanctuary, and this event will be occurring right at the end of the nesting season. However, we have added conditions that we will go around and do a survey of the area, identify any sensitive areas that need to be cordoned off, and so that we can have them taped off, or other areas to notify people of sensitivity areas so they're not to intrude into. There will be closure of the Laguna Grande Park in that one section that's in the area we identified for the grass area, but there will be continued access around the remainder of the park. So if you're going to come on Hilby Avenue, for instance, you can cross Hilby and you can continue around the park to Monterey on that side. But as you get to the event side, you'll have to walk on Canyon Del Rey. So there is no permanent blockage of people having access to the coastal boundaries or areas of the city of Seaside, or to the beach area further to the west.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dan Mewis, Recreation Superintendent. So like Rick Medina said, This is the second year we'll be hosting this event. Last year we had it at the golf course. We had some challenges with that, so we brought it back to the council at the beginning of March, and they provided direction to have the event at City Hall this year. So we have a lot of the same elements that we had at the golf course, the carnival rides, petting zoo, pony rides, rock wall. 2 great bands will be performing as well. And then we will have an addition of 2 small carnival rides that will be probably on Harcourt Avenue in that closure there as well. So the fireworks will start at 9:30. It's about a 20-minute show, and then the event will conclude right around 10 o'clock. Hopefully get everything cleaned up, close the road down, and all that is necessary. Working with the fireworks company, we're making sure that we clear all the aluminum and plastic material from the fireworks themselves before they get launched off into the sky. And if there are any debris that will be left, it will just be biodegradable paper that we will have staff go by and clean up right after the event, and then the public works crew will then come in on Friday morning as well. So,
Commissioners, anything?
approximately 20,000.
Oh, wow. Wow.
The scope of the permit, in this case tonight, is to the fireworks. I know.
I'm just wondering.
The majority of the people at the golf course, when we were there, were congregated on an area that is about the size of the grass here at City Hall. We have the street all the way down from Sonoma to Hilby, so that will take a lot of the people there as well, and then up Harcourt. I wasn't here when the Amgen happened a few years ago when we were the start city,
Yeah.
but I was told that we had approximately about that amount of people there for that
was
as
a
well.
lot.
So
Yeah.
it's going to be
Yeah.
the same scope of an event like that.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on this matter can come forward. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to commissioners. We'll start it, just to let you know. William Silva, right?
Yeah.
Is
You want me to-
My thing went dead, I'm sorry. It won't come back on. So I'm going by memory. Oh, thank you.
So you want to start with me?
Sure.
Well, you know, I'm a little biased towards 4th of July. I think one of the saddest things that happened on the peninsula was when Monterey stopped doing their fireworks show. And I was thrilled last year, even though I live near there and we dealt with the traffic and everything else, just having the fireworks again was wonderful. My kids think that 4th of July is the best holiday ever because they got to grow up in a city where we do still allow, you know, safe and sane fireworks. And so I think I'm thrilled that the city's doing it. I think it's good to bring the community together. So I'm encouraged by that. I trust that on the other permitting stuff, you're going to get into indemnification and the things that go with the contractor that's going to do that. But as far as the plan for building the platform and whatnot, the staging area, it sounds great.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think one of the early years when we first moved to Seaside, we did that above the lake. I think it was 2004, I think, when we had it. And we were just kind of waiting for that to come back. It was great. We were able to invite a lot of friends over and show off Seaside for, but wasn't it like early 2000s? Yeah, it was the birthday. Yeah, it was like, yeah. So, yeah, that was wonderful. So I'm for it. Yeah.
Just one question for me. I know there was some discussion at the council meeting about putting a platform out on the water so that we wouldn't intrude on that grass area. Was that just unrealistic because of the nesting season and things like that?
Yeah, that was not going to be feasible at this time for that. So that's discussing it with the fireworks contractor. This was our best alternative for having the event here at City
When they
Hall.
talked about it, I assumed that was what the answer was going to be, but I'm all for this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, me too. For those of you that have been around long enough, we missed the Feast of Lanterns ones. Usually it's too foggy for us to see up here on Seaside Hill.
That's true. Yeah.
But when Monterey stopped, it was sad too, but glad to see we're picking it up. I'm sorry that you moved it because you were right out my side window. I could just sit there in the house and watch the whole thing. Nice and warm,
Yeah.
but definitely for it. So, do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the coastal development application number CB2-19-03.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Good. And again, an appeal may be submitted in writing within 7 calendar days of this meeting. The appeal shall state the pertinent facts and base the appeal upon the filing fees. Okay. Okay, work session, West Broadway Urban Village.
Good evening, Beth Rocha, Associate Planner. West Broadway Urban Village Plan, specific plan for the area off of Broadway, Palm, and some other side streets was originally passed about 10 years ago, I believe. At least that's what was in my mind last August when we came forward the first time with amendments to the plan. That was in August, and there was some interest in the Planning Commission at something we hinted at regarding bringing back further considerations for changes to the uses that are permitted in those areas. The first time around, we were conservative with our approach, and we got rid of a lot of language that was being repeated for each section of the West Broadway Urban Village Plan, and that breaks down in terms of what you see in the purple. That's primary streets. It has its own use section code for it. And then north of Palm also has separate uses that are allowed, and then the areas you see shaded essentially south of Palm has its own. So what we did last time around was combine those use tables, because before it separated based on ground floor and upper floor. And for us, having to flip through 3 pages to get to what was next, putting it on 1 page showed us a lot of what the thought was back then when they originally approved it, and also some things to our attention of how does this make sense versus that. So I'm going to hand out to each of you a copy of the permitted use table, and you'll see, as I said before, the primary streets, ground floor, upper floor, north side of Palm, ground and upper, and then all other streets. And below that is what you see as being all of the permitted uses in the West Broadway Urban Village. And a lot of these uses and their associated definitions go back to Title 17 of the zoning code, which is a little bit outdated in terms of how they describe uses. So when I'm looking at this in terms of West Broadway, the uses highlighted in red are all of the primary uses that are permitted outright on Broadway on the ground floor. And other commonalities I can see is that we allow for residential or for housing there. And all the other uses in terms of how they're listed on the table are very different from how we see things listed in the rest of the Muni Code, where it might have a heading that says residential, or it will have a heading that says commercial uses or industrial uses. It's not broken down this way, so for us having to actively use this document quite a bit with the traffic that we're getting from people coming in and inquiring about how to get a retail or commercial business spot on West Broadway, it takes us just a little bit more time. And also for the uses not being specific to some of what the proposals that are coming in or what people are wanting to have in terms of flex spaces, I think there's some room for us to update the code. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 4 questions, and there's 5 of you. So 2 of you can pair up, and if 3 of you want to go solo on these. But I'm going to pass these out so you can see before I get into the specific questions. It's not
Yeah.
it's a thinking exercise.
Psychological exam.
went back to high school.
But I have some writing implements, so you
Is
can
that what I've got?
write on these. Good
Okay,
job.
with my notes, okay.
And maybe you don't need that, maybe you do.
Oh, you got ahead of time there, huh?
Be a little bit prepared.
Yeah. Or were they all there? No? Yeah, that wasn't part of my packet.
Everybody has writing implements if you want.
No,
Bright orange highlighter?
I'll go for just boring.
You're good.
All right, you got it, all right.
So 4 questions that I want your input on for when we come forward with these next round of amendments. Question 1 is, what uses, just by looking at what's listed in the far left column, what's not clear as to what that means and what seems outdated to you? The second question, and again, if you really want to work on question 1, let me know now, and you can snag it before anybody else does. Because I have 4 questions, and I don't think all of you need to answer all 4. Unless you really feel like providing that amount of feedback, that would be great.
Okay.
But otherwise, after we each answer these questions and voice what you have considered, maybe that will trigger other thoughts where you can just have comments back onto what other commissioners have said.
I want to know what all the questions are before I
Of
commit to
course,
one of them.
I know. I'd
Yeah.
say the same. Question 2 is what permit requirements don't make sense? So permitted, minor use permit, and use permit. Last planning commission meeting, I came here for a pinball arcade in which the applicant applied for both a variance and a use permit, and there were absolutely 0 questions. Maybe the staff report was comprehensive, maybe it's a use that we all saw that was being good for the city, or maybe it was that the permit type was maybe not appropriate for a code that was written in 1986 when there were different issues with arcades in the city. Question 3, what uses should be allowed in more areas than indicated? And I'll just share to you an observation I had regarding what is highlighted on the top left of what's on the screen right now. Those are all the permitted uses on Broadway that are only allowed, for the most part, on the ground floor of Broadway. So for future thinking, 10 years from now, do we want the planners coming back having to amend what we limited to only being on the ground floor of Broadway or on the upper floors of Broadway, Palm, and all the surrounding areas? And question 4 is less of a question, more of a task, I guess. Categorize similar land uses. So is there a similarity between a day spa, therapeutic massage, and health and exercise facilities? Or is there a commonality between outdoor entertainment, public plazas, paseos, and parks? So if you could indicate which one you'd like to work on, and again, if you're sitting next to someone that you want to work on this with, or if you'd prefer to work solo, then do so.
This is strictly Broadway, right? Not Palm and everything outside of it?
This is West Broadway Urban Village, so we're talking about everything.
Everything.
And I can go
including
back
Palm,
to
yeah.
this map. So primary streets are purple, north of Palm is yellow, and then everything else, well, I take that back. North of Palm is just the yellow north of Palm, this area here, this strip. And then this is all other, which includes these yellow areas. 3 was what should be allowed in more areas than currently indicated. Yeah. And you could specify what permit type based on what the current
I'm definitely interested in
designation
number
is.
3. I'm interested in all of them, but number 3 stands out.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to claim 1, 2, or 4? All right, thank you. Spletta and Owens, you want to pair up on one, or Evans, do you want to play
Sure.
musical
All right.
chairs?
That's cool. That's fine. Yeah.
So when I said pair up on one, do you want to take number 1?
Let the last
All right.
person take their choice, and then we'll take what's left. How's that?
Sure.
All right.
We can handle it, Mike.
Yeah.
All right,
All
thank
right.
you.
What is not clear? What seems outdated?
Oh, okay, and what permit requirements
Request
don't
do
make
not mix.
sense?
Yeah.
And they all make sense out of that.
Oh, yeah, permitted, use permitted, minor use permit.
She offered you highlighter. She offered a, oh, there you go. Look at that. She's gonna make you a draft.
That makes sense for sure, as far as night clubs.
Well, yeah, definitely down in that area.
Sorry, what was your name again?
Beth.
Hi,
Rocha.
Beth. What's the process? How do you want us to engage with you in the dialogue? Do you want us to work on a specific set of questions and then ask
think
that
that's what they
when
were considering for
we're
the
all
Palm.
through questions, or is this going to be
Don't
kind of
think that would be
ongoing
ideal to do it there.
engagement?
Mark it up in response to the specific question that you're electing to take on.
Mark this one up.
Or the
Right,
one that you have
exactly.
is fine,
Maybe
unless
some light
it's kind of
industrial, quite literally not retail.
I have my notes, but okay.
taking too much. And then, yeah, we'll go through 1 through 4, asking for feedback.
On the permit one, is there a chance we could split this up between the yellow and the purple? Because they're two different things. One's housing and one's more downtown business. When we're looking at what permit doesn't make sense, well, one would make sense in, say, the yellow zone, but it would make perfect sense in the purple zone. You see what I mean?
Sure, and I mean, you can use that as guidance when you're looking at, for example, north side of Palm, where multifamily, single-family, live, work, and live, work, office, residential is permitted. Then you go to the upper floor, those are permitted, but in reality, if we look out long-term to West Broadway, and especially the block that's across from Seaside Creates, if a developer comes in there with a proposal for ground floor retail, do we not want to, as it indicates below, to have any live work potentially in that space? Or is that something that we want to potentially explore? The same applies for eating and drinking establishments. Let's say somebody comes into the Dunes property and wants to put on an outdoor roof deck on top. That's kind of accessory too, but you could have 2 separate uses operating in that manner. So although I think all other streets, north side of Palm was intended more to be a transitional area between commercial of Broadway and the residential of Palm. So yeah, try to do as best as you can in making connections as to what is maybe exclusively prohibited on Broadway and how that transitions to Palm.
Because the north side would be the backup to the auto center, right?
That's further north, right? Further north,
No.
that's north of Broadway, but the north side of
You're
Palm
looking
is
here.
behind,
See where the city yard is?
Right here.
Right. And then the purple right in front of it.
that's Broadway.
Well, Broadway.
The one that's
Broadway's
zipping across
here.
right there. But the north side of Palm would be,
Is here.
yeah. Yeah, exactly, yeah. That's the north side,
About anything in the purple side
yeah.
with all of it.
Mhm. Primary streets, so let's see here, your north side of Palm, right here, yeah. That's the local stores. Right, and that would be meant more for here. So that should be struck right out of here, and stuff from here.
For the purposes of definitions, I was reading through it, and you, does the city, and I don't know what code, municipal code section 17 says, does the city view condominiums and townhouses as single-family because they're single ownership, or as multifamily because they're adjoined?
Rick, is there a distinction made between townhomes, which aren't stacked, versus condos, which can be?
I know that condos are often a multifamily design, but from
Exactly,
a
that
financing
upper
standpoint, they're
purple area,
considered
that is-
single-family.
Zoning-wise, I would say it'd be
Supposed to be
multifamily.
Okay.
parking
Yeah.
structure.
the layers that fall into that, whether or not you're paying HOAs in a townhome, you're not, versus paying that in
just
a
don't know.
condo
You could do-
association,
you could
you
attach
are,
a
right?
use
Because of
permit.
shared walls and other
Well,
other elements.
townhouses, it depends on if it's a row house or
Yeah.
if they're part of a single structure. So
Yeah.
townhouses can be condos. But in either situation, because you can own them individually, one family can own each unit,
Right.
it's considered single-family, even though from a zoning perspective, it may be considered a multifamily complex.
Multifamily.
And so, when it says certain things are or not allowed, I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right way.
Well, one thing to look at too, you have upper floors,
I totally missed
single-family upper floors on north side of Palm and all the streets.
Right,
So that would tell me then that would include a townhouse design with a
That's-
single family.
right, yeah.
Okay?
They're all permitted.
And the rental then would be your typical multifamily,
Or your ADU on the upper floor, possibly.
or an ADU. Well, but that would be under state law, but it's allowed
Childcare
in a
facilities.
single-family house. So,
Yeah, I know, but,
I have one question for you.
sure.
On Broadway, where we have multifamily residence on the second floor, would we make sure that, like, it wasn't over a restaurant or somewhere where, say, there was a oil fire or something that, or would we just be putting it for anywhere it could be over any building?
I think we would assume that the fire code has those ratings in place that require that separation and protection. I've seen that quite a bit in a lot of cities I've been to.
Yeah, I did the one on Pacific Street, Santa Cruz.
Mm.
A lot of the buildings are- a lot of it is residential third floor.
Mm.
Second floor is lawyers, accounting,
Right.
certain other businesses, and then, of course, ground floor retail.
It's a good point. There are logistical challenges with putting residential above food services because of back of house, trash, and because of the
Smells.
smoke and the
Yeah.
ventilation requirements and stuff, so it gets a little bit more complicated. I think, though, if you look at Santana Row, places like that where there's mixed use, they still tend to do it.
Yeah.
You just have to mitigate that a little bit more carefully.
It's more expensive.
It
It's
is,
more
yeah,
expensive.
yeah. Engineering,
That brand new one on San Carlos is really nice, because they moved the Starbucks on the street over here.
I don't know that one.
It was done by,
All right.
the group out of Santa Cruz. It turned out really nice.
Mr. Evans, are you near
Well,
complete?
since I'm number one, I'll start, I guess.
Is everybody else kind of at the point where you feel like you can talk and we can start discussing? You need to have your heads together still.
yeah, that one's fine.
I like everything that they got here.
Except for this,
Right,
yeah.
middle one.
Right.
All right.
So, this is all new to me, so a lot of your terms and a lot of the, jargon that's going on here is going right by me. So, as far as what's not clear or outdated for somebody like me coming in, I'm thinking, why have we got specialty in so many of these? Why don't we just have food retail or goods retail or whatever technical terms are needed for the code, something like that? It just seemed odd that we got specialty quality, especially when there's no difference on where it's permitted or, what's going on. It just seems strange that we were almost duplicative on a lot of those things. And then I didn't understand, and I see looks like maybe there's footnotes here towards the bottom. We've got live work, office, residential. I don't understand what the difference is between all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I realize it's not part of my question, but it just seemed odd that a lot of those were limited to just the ground floor
And drive-through.
of the north side of Palm. I just, didn't make sense to me.
Okay.
Seems like, well, and just as a general statement, again, it's not part of number one, I don't understand why we can't have again, I don't understand the code and all that stuff that limits what we can and can't do, but, I'm just so used to, especially downtown
Yeah.
situations in many towns, beach towns in particular, with, nightclubs and bars and restaurants upstairs.
Yeah, right.
And everything here is ground floor. It's just
Right.
odd to me. Yeah, so that's about all I had.
Okay, jeez.
Thanks. The footnotes for the live work and live work office residential just specifies the breakup of those spaces in the code.
So it's needed to break those up like that?
It specifies, I think, the floor area that you occupy, and also the number of employees that
So
you're
this is-
allowed to
This is kind
have.
of driven by code verbiage.
Yeah.
terminology. Okay.
Denise, are you ready?
Yeah, item number 4, summary approval. And first group is specialty food, eating, drinking establishment, no, yeah, bars and nightclubs, and outdoor entertainment.
Hmm.
And then second group. And then
Go ahead.
is specialty goods and retail, specialty goods, retail, quality goods and services, personal services, small light scale manufacturing, business services, and banking financial institutions.
Go ahead.
Next one. The next group is childcare, specialized education, and public health facilities. Next one is day spa, therapeutic massage, health and exercise facilities, and recreational facilities. The next one is public health clubs, lodges, meeting facilities,
Just
city
categorizing them,
facilities,
similar uses.
fair, and
Yeah.
parks. And that's it. This one.
Yeah.
Next grouping is professional and government offices, medical and dental offices, and parking structure. And that's it. So that's it.
Okay.
And then my last group is the last one, multi-family residential, single-family residential, with work, with office residential, and lodging on the list and monthly rate.
Thank you.
And I know that there are different permits for some of those that are on the same permit, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that just for the sake of categorizing them together? Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what the label would be categorizing, but.
I'll share some thoughts
All right.
after we're done with this.
Okay.
So ours is basically,
Owens and Spalletta, are you ready, or should we let Mr. Silva go first? All right.
yeah.
So I've been involved in the design entitlements of some mixed-use village concepts, and so I understand the importance of programming, you know, and dialing in certain uses, but I also recognize that in a nascent project like this, where you've got to attract people, and we don't have the rooftops yet to support all the retail, that it seems like there's got to be maybe a little bit more flexibility. So that was the first thing that came to me when I was reading the staff report is, how do you build in as much flexibility? Because what will typically happen in a project like this is you may get one user that's a placeholder until there's a new use that's better for the area. And so the market reality may drive that a little bit, and I think so, you know, to set you guys up for the best success, set the city up for the best success, how do you build in some more flexibility? So I was really interested in the question about what uses might be allowed in more areas, and I agree that the foods and the dining, for example, should possibly have the option of being upstairs for the reasons that Mr. Evans said, and I think you even alluded to sometimes nightclubs or a roof deck bar or something is upstairs, and I think that, again, giving people flexibility to come up with creative ideas is great. I also think that on North Palm, it may not be a horrible place to allow some specialty food service. I mean, you know, a coffee shop, you know, on a little bit less busy street isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you look at like Sweet Elena's in Sand City, and it's in an industrial zone, but it's a really popular, cool vibe. So thoughts like that. I thought that some of the personal services potentially could go upstairs. You know, in many of the instances, you may want to reserve a use permit or a minor use permit so you can scrutinize it a little more closely, especially if there's noise and stuff that could impact a neighboring use. I thought that medical and dental should maybe be expanded to be included on Broadway. I know you're excluding it now, but one of the things that we're seeing, you know, the retail landscape is changing so much, and it's hard to be competitive in retail. And we're seeing things like optometrists and glass shops, dentists and physical therapists, chiropractors going into retail environments and creating more of a storefront. And I'd hate to exclude that use because it's still going to bring traffic, especially as you're trying to build up your the substance of what's downtown.
Exactly.
So that was a thought that I had. I also thought that the live work was a little restrictive, and I thought that live work might be really useful on Broadway. And the reason is that you have so many separate property owners down there, and so many of the sites are too small to handle the sort of the critical mass of a multifamily project or a mixed-use project. And in those instances, a row house style live work may be the only suitable thing, just because of the economics and the ownership issues that go into it. And if you had a townhouse where a family lived upstairs but ran a barber shop or an accounting office downstairs, that maybe they would have 5 chairs in the barber shop, or instead of 2, or there might be some flexibility to give them a little more variety, especially given the small footprints you're dealing with. And then I also thought on some of the professional offices, real estate offices can be really appropriate in town centers. People like to walk by the windows of real estate offices, look at the photographs, and they're all over Carmel. So those are some thoughts that I had on where there might be room for, for more allowed uses in different areas.
Thanks for that. Not to speak to any of the specific uses, but some of what you said is what we've had people come in inquiring about, and without us having to do something specific for one applicant, yet taking an approach that would cover this whole code. And again, looking forward, not just for one person, but for the potential moving forward. Like I said, this was written 10 years ago, and already in just the year that our office at Seaside Creates has been down there in the past year, we've had people come in with some pretty interesting ideas, but the code's been limiting. So on top of, finding a space and having to do all the improvements necessary of an older building, adding the potential of a, 90-day waiting period for us to do a code amendment through you and council is a bit of an investment, let alone to say a risk.
One more thing that I didn't mention before, condos and townhomes on the upper floors of Broadway, it's not called, if those are single family, and this is where the question came from, practically speaking, the average price of condos in Seaside is in the mid-400s, whereas the average price of apartments in Seaside for purchases in the 200s. So economically, condos may be a really critical vehicle to make a project economically viable, so that you can get the housing above the retail. And so I would, again, for the flexibility, not to limit yourselves, give you better opportunities to make projects happen, water notwithstanding, but I think that the condos would be important as well.
All right, thank you.
We are up now.
Center stage.
Great. Okay, just a few of them. You want to start, Mike, or?
Yeah, so I guess this was for the permit requirements that make sense. So, for the most part, for the most part, most of these permits seem to be fine, except for, are we solely focusing just on the permits that make sense, or?
Or what doesn't make sense?
It's not so much the permit, it's basically what is, say, like on Broadway as opposed to north side of Palm Avenue. Could we comment on that?
Comment on anything.
All right. So, the small-scale light manufacturing on the primary streets, that seemed to be a little out of place there, possibly better located on the north side of Palm Avenue or the other streets.
A quick note on that footnote that's there. It's small-scale light manufacturing as an accessory to primary retail use to allow for a wholesale component of a retail business, including similar uses such
Oh, as
as
part of it. Okay.
bakery, upholstery, tile making, screen printing, architectural showroom, and supplies. So
Oh, okay. All right.
just to clarify that definition.
Okay,
Another?
then the next one that I saw anyways, as we were going down these, we're trying to look at that's why it's really hard when there's so much purple in the outside. Because Broadway Street to me should have different type of businesses than, say, off of Del Monte where the old Seaside Market is, for instance. I would be perfectly fine with, say, a facility, hold on here, a public health facility where Seaside Market was, right? But I wouldn't really be for it on Broadway because I would be more wanting something that's gonna draw people down there, not draw them because they're ill or something. I would rather have it draw down there because we've got restaurants or nightclub or stores that really want them to come in. So I think when we look at Broadway, we should actually look at it a little different than as the outside purples. For instance, I love the fact that you've got the parking structure on the north side in the purple there behind where, say, Max Stove and Goodwill is. That's great.
May I pose a
Sure.
question then regarding parking structures and how they're
Permitted.
permitted?
Yeah, it seemed a little
So
odd too.
use
yeah.
permit on Broadway and Del Monte, but you can have that by right on the north side of Palm, which we said in this plan was supposed to be more residentially oriented. That's what stuck out to me in terms of a use that didn't make sense. But there's
was that?
Exactly, me
There's
too.
history back to how all these decisions were made, and even, Del
fact that
Monte
it's
and Broadway, those are the
Permitted for
primary
this- these are use
arterials.
permit.
We have
Right.
activating
So,
use
for
with
parking
a
structure.
restaurant on the corner where, they were supposed to maybe redesign the street, and we also have the potential for more activating uses on Del Monte. So that it's not a daytime only activation, but maybe it's the beginning of something that then pulls you onto strolling on Broadway afterwards.
Now, when we talk parking structures, is that going to include, say they they do an underground parking and then they build their stores? We're not talking that, right? So when you have the use permit for the parking structures on this side of Broadway, I would suggest taking those out completely, because why would we have a parking structure where we want to put the parking structure behind it, it would seem. You park there and then you walk down the street and you have all these great buildings, restaurants, all this.
It would just be for a parking structure as a solo use, not for something associated with a mixed-use development or
So then-
residential.
so then that doesn't make sense,
The
yeah.
original
Yeah,
plan
so it
called
doesn't
out
make any sense.
the city's courtyard area for being where the potential of a parking structure would be located.
Yeah, anything on that back section would be fantastic. But unfortunately, we do have these two white circles there that
So regarding that, you think that that should be what?
I think there should be no parking structures on the actual, because that
On
is
Broadway.
actual Broadway,
Primary
right?
street.
And
Primary
Del Monte.
street. Oh, Del Monte. Yeah, even Del Monte, I don't think we'd, I
In the
think
purple.
you're trying to attract people into that funnel of our new downtown area, because unfortunately for us that have lived here a long time, Seaside got this little basis of a name with it, and we want to get away from that. We want to see something that draws people in here, sidewalk cafes, coffee shops, things like that, that make people want to walk down the street and enjoy themselves. I mean, you guys did a great job with the look of Broadway, the street and stuff. I think that,
I think the plan also included increased public transportation that's directed to downtown, correct?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
A lot of times, parking structures that front, a town center, will, at least on the ground floor, have some retail uses. There's one in downtown SLO, for example, that's got a Nike store.
Yeah.
And then you go up, and so it's tucked behind. So perhaps, and I don't know how you incorporate this into the specific plan or the code, that, it can make it more economically viable as well, because you pick up good rental rates on those spaces, but you don't lose the urban edge that you are trying to preserve on that streetscape, as the chair mentioned.
Isn't that also kind of the plan of that area there where the parking structure is proposed, with the frontage
Right.
being the public library, I guess, and a bunch of shops and everything like
This
that?
back area.
Yeah.
This- Yeah.
So then we're going to do that
Fronting
anyway.
here with the shops and then on the back.
Yeah.
other than
Quick
that-
question, have you guys given thought to, and I know planners have worked on this, but typically, restaurants that do patio dining prefer to be on the north side of the street because they get the sun and the southern exposure. whereas they'll tend to avoid the south side of the street. Have you guys done any, thought on how you can direct them to that side of the street more?
I'm not actually sure.
Okay.
If we're talking in terms of true north and south and seaside, and anybody here can correct me, is this,
That's the north side of the street, yeah.
it's the north side of the street, but is it really true north in terms of
It's-
how we're
it's-
oriented in the
Yeah, it's
peninsula?
almost exactly true north if you look at the legend on the bottom
We
corner.
do notice, because we're on this side, that this side definitely gets more sun, but there's a number of, there's established restaurant, Mariscos here, and then there's going to be a restaurant as well opening here, and it is allowed for any restaurant on Broadway to have an outdoor
So just let
sidewalk cafe.
the market dictate that then? Okay.
Yeah.
It's typically more desirable. Markets want, or restaurants want to be on the side where it's warmer outside.
Of course.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, when you ask north-south, I just look at it because obviously we don't know what the true declination of north is at this point.
Actually, there's an arrow on the map.
I think it just means
There.
what they consider
Yeah.
north. Yeah, it's not true north, it's what they consider north,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
But there
Close
is
enough,
more
right?
sun exposure on that side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then like are they still talking about the light rail where the long skinny strip is bordering? Okay.
Yeah,
I know when we first sat on it, they were talking light rail and,
right by two Rickies there, yeah.
yeah, well, more by where Allen's Auto Glass,
Mm-hmm.
coming right through there in the irrigation
So
place.
can we,
So-
you have other things that you want to plug
No,
in
that's
regarding the
actually, like you
uses?
said, that's the one that stuck out. I mean, I was just going, why would it be use permit? And I agree, it shouldn't even be on there anyway, so. Other than that, it all seems to fit.
Anything to get Seaside Market to build.
Yeah.
All right,
But
so
the permits, to me, the rest of them are fine.
I took notes on everything he said, but I would also like to collect your sheets.
Well, if
And
you
then we
make
can
sense of
provide
mine.
Oh, yeah.
copies of those to you all so you can see and remember
Oh, okay.
this exercise. And then one quick thing I want to show you just in terms of an exercise I did, grouping the uses, 'cause I've been thinking about this for a little bit. Primary activating uses, and this is also too changing language to influence how people think about spaces. Personal growth and enrichment, health and wellness, community gathering places, residential, and then this last one, I couldn't really decide, but I just put restricted uses because maybe it is something I want to give more consideration to. But this is how I divided the uses, and I will, of course, take into consideration your input. But the primary activating uses are consistent with how the current code is and allowing for those uses on Broadway and on Del Monte. And then personal growth and enrichment, child care facilities, and specialized education. Specialized education is one of those uses that's defined in the zoning code, and it includes all types of studios, yoga studios, martial arts studios, anywhere you were going and you're learning or teaching your body to act and move in a new way. Health and wellness, I put in medical and dental, day spas, therapeutic massage, health and exercise facilities. And then community gathering places, outdoor entertainment, public halls, clubs, lodges, meeting facilities, recreational facilities, civic and cultural facilities, and plazas, paseos, and parks. And then residential is what it is, as we all see at the bottom of the chart that you did your exercise on. And the restricted uses, bars and nightclubs, parking structures, banks and financial institutions, and professional and government offices. So I'll work through everything in terms of the feedback I was given, but this is also going to be an exercise in switching up either potentially the uses that are named and, like I said before, maybe even the categories under which some of these uses follow. That will make it easier for us to assist customers as they come in and to start thinking about these uses in a different way.
On the purple zones too, the child care facilities, again, I don't think that belongs on Broadway. I think that any side away from it would be fine, especially on the ground floor. I think we should take that out of there. Like I said, again, I just think the whole aspect of what the downtown should look like, I don't think it
Oh, right
Thank you.
next door to the bar.
Yeah, right next to the golf. We'll put that in the night.
Or next to an ice cream shop.
Yeah,
but
or
hey.
nice street shop, yeah.
That was actually a good point, and I agree with that, and I forgot to mention it. But banks are not allowed on Broadway, and I think about, I go to Alvarado Street more often to make bank deposits for my business than anything else, and while I'm there, I hit this spot or that spot, so the exclusion of banks might be worth looking at again.
Any additional thoughts in closing?
Looking over it, you did a very good job.
Thank you
Yeah.
for participating, and I think that item took longer than both a use permit and a coastal development permit, so hopefully we make it easier for people moving forward, that they don't have to spend 10 minutes getting a UP or a CDP.
Thank
All
you
right,
very
thank
much.
you.
All right,
It was nice to have a little brain teaser.
yeah, right.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll have reports from commissioners. I do have one question for staff. What is all those Lexuses doing parked on
AT&T.
or,
At US Open.
is it AT&T?
Yes, or-
Whatever it is, golfing.
Yeah.
Okay. Did he get something for that? Just was curious. Okay, good. Nice. Yeah, I just looked at it, and I've had several people ask me, because we walked that, what are these doing? I go, I haven't got a clue. Because normally AT&T will have signs on the doors already when they
Do they have keys inside?
I don't care for Lexus. All good. Okay, that was just my question for staff. A couple of my neighbors actually asked me. So I have no clue. Okay.
No.
Very good. Anything else from commissioners?
No.
Okay, report from staff? Well, God, this is such an easy one. Yes. Okay,
Okay.
very good. Okay, well, if no reports from staff, do we have a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.